I'm
the
not
enemy.
ready yet. I'm not ready yet.
That was quite the run. I died in the Diablo 4 server slam, and honestly, it felt great. The Diablo 4 server slam ran from May 12 to 14 and was an opportunity for Blizzard to test the servers and aspects of the game as a beta test before it goes live in June. I'm making this video to talk about how that beta test felt as a hardcore player and some of the things I'm looking forward to and thinking about before the game comes out. The last time that I died in a Diablo game before the server slam was playing an Amazon in Diablo 2. I'd gotten the character to a pretty high level and I was going into the sewers of Lutko Lane, feeling like I was pretty able to take on that dungeon. Now, the thing about how I died was I came around a corner and a bunch of skeletal archers murked me before I had any opportunity to think about what was happening or to interact with them in any way. It felt a lot like the game had essentially cheated me out of that life and that loot. So there was no gameplay response, there was no ability to interact with what was going on. The game had rolled the dice and decided at that point, now was the time for Xeric to die. However, at no point when I was playing the Diablo 4 server slam, with the boss fights or any of the other fights, did I feel like there was no gameplay element to the risk. There was always a high degree of risk. I felt like I could die at any time, and every boss fight, it's a new game, but every boss fight felt like I was going to die. I felt like I hadn't been prepared, I didn't know what I was doing, and if I made mistakes, the boss was going to kill me. The difference between what I'm describing in Diablo 2 and Diablo 4 is that in Diablo 2, the death I took wasn't necessarily related to gameplay. I took a corner, there was an enemy that could kill me pretty instantaneously, and it did. In Diablo 4, it never felt like I was going to turn a corner and just lose the game. It did feel like I was going to die almost all the time in combat, especially against larger bosses. But it was great because it still allowed me enough information, a little bit of wiggle room, to learn the fights and to squeak by. And when I did die, I realized that it was my responsibility because I should have prepared better for the fight that I was going into. It felt fair. Now, I think that there's an important caveat here, that although what I played felt fair, I didn't necessarily play every boss in every instance that we could get into during the server slam. We also were level capped to level 20, and there's no knowing of if the game will feel unfair when we get to higher levels, or if there will be things that take away the gameplay aspect of losing. However, that being said, what I saw was hard gameplay, difficult gameplay, challenges at each level, and bosses that really tested my ability to play the game, and it was refreshing. There are some other elements of the game that add an additional layer of difficulty, in particular for hardcore players, but some of these things just add difficulty in general. The ability to respec is pretty expensive in Diablo 4. Changing skills on the skill tree is not as trivial as changing skills as it was in Diablo 3. It might be a little bit more forgiving than the experience that most folks have had in Diablo 2. I remember playing Diablo 2 when you couldn't respec whatsoever, and if you'd made a mistake, you just had to create a new character. I don't think we're going to be quite there, but the cost to respecing is significant. And one of the aspects of Diablo 4 that I saw, at least with the early levels, is that I was poor the entire time. I didn't have a lot of gold, I didn't have a lot of smithing materials, and so I didn't have the ability to pay for respecs if I needed them. That leads me into my next point, is the ability to improve your gear is really, really important in Diablo 3. You make improvements when you pay for your changes to your weapons and armor. You have to pay to imbue your items with legendary powers. And I always felt like I was making a decision about whether I wanted to sell something or smith it for materials, because I needed both of those things all the time to improve my character. So we're going to make really difficult decisions during Diablo 4 about how we want to go about those things in order to get the best character out of the limited resources that we have. One of the aspects about the gold pour system in Diablo 4 where you're constantly on the lookout for money, where you need more materials, where you don't have enough to just smith and smith and smith to get materials, and you're not getting as many items as you might have in Diablo 3, for example, is that you are really making tough decisions about where to invest, and the investments of gold and smithing materials are significant into the items you have. Now, this makes the game difficult for softcore players as well, because they're spending a lot of time to get materials, to get gold, and it's costly for them. However, in hardcore, if you lose your material, if you have to start a new character, that's an incredible mountain to climb to get back to where you were. It's not going to be as simple as just paying the gold you have out of your stash, because you were already poor before you died. The field of view for the game is much narrower. You're fighting in a much smaller space. And even if that is just a psychological thing, it can feel very cramped during the combat. I know in my hardcore experience, I've tended sometimes towards ranged characters because I don't want to be necessarily right beside the enemies that can kill me in one hit, and I don't want to be taking a lot of hits on a hardcore character. Diablo 4 puts you right there with the enemies a lot of the time. You have to dodge, you have to roll, and I think for some people it's going to be a big adjustment to learn the parry and dodge moves, the sort of dip and duck and dodge that you have to do in the game to make sure that you stay alive. It's not as simple as simply attacking, moving away, attacking, moving away. There is a lot more to it, especially in the boss fights. One of the things that hardcore players are going to need to pay attention to are random spawns in the game. In any dungeon, certain boss enemies or elite enemies can attack you, like the Butcher. This is an enemy that people saw in both beta tests and can attack you below level 20. The Butcher spawns randomly in dungeons. They'll come after you when you're doing an unrelated quest, and it just hunt you down and kill you in the dungeon. Now, you have to be prepared for that in softcore, but in hardcore you have to be doubly prepared because that could end your whole run. So there are going to be elements of the gameplay that are surprises that you have to adapt to right out the gate. You're not going to be able to always just play it through the same way. You're going to have to adapt. Overall, I'm pretty excited for Diablo 4. I think there's a lot of stuff that's going to be fun to explore. The 20 to 100 levels have not been explored yet by the vast majority of beta testers, and we're going to get to see what they have in store for us in the rest of the game. There's a lot of stuff in there that's not necessarily relevant to the hardcore experience. There's cosmetics, and you can decorate your horse and put lights on it and whatever. It doesn't really make much difference to me, but if you're into that kind of thing, there's going to be lots of time to sink there. And ultimately, I saw a lot of stuff that was really interesting for how the story was going to go. I didn't focus on the story during the course of the beta test. When you get to play the game, you can experience the story then. But as far as the hardcore play, it was really challenging. I thought the death was earned, and I really enjoyed the server slam. Alright, that's going to be it for me today. I really appreciate you watching this video, and I hope you like and subscribe so that the algorithm can get fed or whatever it needs to do, and I will catch you in Sanctuary sometime.